our last and next amazing thesis of the morning, Tyler Gill will assert that Black History Month is indispensable to our country as it educates all Americans about the vital role that Black Americans have played in our country. Welcome, Tyler.
Good morning, Dr. Bridges, faculty, family, students, and friends. It is an honor to be presenting to you all a topic that means so much to me. Lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven rings. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. That was Lift Every Voice and Sing, written by James Weldon Johnson in 1900, first performed as a poem for the celebration of Abraham Lincoln's birthday, which falls on the second week of February. In 1926, historian Carter G. Woodson created Black History Month for the recognition of the importance for African Americans in this country, and it is something that is observed in February annually. Since 1976, every president has selected a theme for Black History Month, and the theme for this year was the Black family, identity, diversity, and representation. Woodson shares the same beliefs displayed in Johnson's song that it was by faith that the people of African descent would be able to survive the dark past of enslavement while also celebrating the hope of a better and brighter future. And because of this, Black History Month is a historical commemoration of value to society. Because Black Americans are worthy of being celebrated, Black History Month inspires and motivates people in this generation, and it leads to inclusive and intentional teaching about Black history in the academic curriculum, and because of this, it should be embraced by us all. Black Americans are worthy of being celebrated, so the celebration of Black History Month is valuable to society. Theodore Johnson, director of the Brennan Center for Justice in Washington, D.C., says that the accomplishments of Black people in the United States merit special attention, particularly given slavery's inhumanity and its vestiges that still shape the nation today. Thinking about where they began and how far Black Americans have come, their accomplishments deserve to be recognized and celebrated. The increased desire to learn about Black history is evidenced through the construction and the demand for tickets at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. The museum being one of the most popular tourist attractions because all Americans want to learn more about Black history, because Black history is American history. During Black history, students get to learn more about the men and women that are not frequently mentioned in U.S. history textbooks, but who also contributed to the growth and success of this country. According to Leon Burrell, the author of The Other America, The African American Experience, says that many white students are barely exposed to African American history throughout their schooling. And when they examine the other side of American history, they often wonder, why haven't we learned this before? An example of a crucial history event is the Wilmington Race Riots, when on November 10, 1898, white supremacists murdered African Americans in Wilmington, North Carolina, because of an editorial that was printed in the Daily Record, which was a Black-owned newspaper. This event removed the elected African American government official in a violent coup, the only one ever on American soil. Adrian LaFrance, the executive editor of The Atlantic, discusses that what happened that day was nearly lost to history. For decades, perpetrators were cast as heroes in American history textbooks, and the Black victims were wrongly described as instigators. It nearly took a century for the truth of what had really happened to begin to creep back into public awareness. An example of an American who deserves more recognition is Justice Thurgood Marshall. Most know about the groundbreaking and infamous case of the Brown v. Board of Education in 1954, and that he was appointed as the first African-American Supreme Court justice. However, little is known about his other important cases that provided for education equality in America. Black History Month gives us an opportunity to learn about not just Justice Marshall's accomplishments, but others like Phyllis Wheatley, Colin Powell, and George Washington Carver. We all can learn from mistakes that have been made and be motivated by stories of triumph and success. so Black History Month provides incredible value to society. In addition to the value that we gain from celebrating Black Americans from the past, Black History Month also inspires and motivates people in this generation to live more virtuously. The Black Lives Matter movement has led the charge of hundreds of marches and demonstrations across the country, mirroring moments from the 1963 through 1965 marches, both in search for justice. Leaders of today took note of lessons learned from the past, inspiring the Black youth. Malcolm X, a leader in the Civil Rights Movement, recognized the importance of the past in order to take action in the present. He said that when you deal with the past, you're dealing with the history. You're actually dealing with the origin of a thing. It is so important for you and me to analyze It is so important for you and me to spend time learning something about the past so that we can analyze it, understand the present, and then do something about it. Through the study of Black history, this generation has gained knowledge of the history of the racial inequality in this country, which has continued to be addressed to this day. They have taken cues from leaders and continue the fight. Lonnie Bunch, the founding director of the museum, says that Black History Month should still matter. It is still the useful tool in the struggle for racial fairness that Woodson envisioned over 90 years ago. After all, no one can deny the power of inspiration as a force for change. Black youth continue making strides for racial equality and to be leaders in movements like Black Lives Matter. And a study of the past motivates those in the present, especially Black youth, to work toward a successful future, regardless of what they may be facing. Finally, studying the past movements of African Americans can inspire people of all races to be socially and politically active against injustice. Noted genealogy historian, associate professor at Howard University, Dr. Paula Matabane, discusses how history and stories about our ancestors not only inspire, but it destroys old stereotypes. Just as people rose against injustice through sit-ins and marches, youth of today began to realize that they too can do the same. Additionally, with the study of Black history, white and Black youth have a greater understanding of the system that has led to the continued social injustices that occur today. This has led to larger numbers of whites marching beside their Black friends and neighbors during the protests against social injustices in this past year. It is so important to study the past, to see what people before have done in order for this generation to have a game plan. Black History Month is relevant because it is a source of inspiration for everyone, regardless of their race or age, in the continued fight against inequality. Not only should Black Americans celebrate and provide inspiration to generations, but equally important, in order for one to embrace the celebration of Black History Month, one must learn and be intentional about Black history in the academic curriculum. The study of Black history, particularly during Black History Month, augments the curriculum that is currently insufficient in regards to the inclusion of Black history. And the Black History Month celebrations fill some of that gap. The study of Adele Cawthorn, professor at Loyola, offers a solution to teaching Black history that unifies. She explains that by taking small steps and sharing stories about strong, smart, Black and brown men and women in history, it helps students to better visualize a world in which people from historically marginalized communities achieving amazing feats are the norm. It is paramount that Black history is integrated into the history curriculum. However, until this is widely practiced across the country, Black History Month celebration should be the first step toward reaching this goal. Unity in this country is what everyone strives for. Daugherty agrees that once everyone acknowledges African Americans and their role in American history, racial prejudice could decrease significantly. When students are taught that there is more to Black history in this country than slavery and how significant a role African Americans played in the development of the United States, the racial prejudice that comes as a result of the impression of racial inferiority would also dissolve and bring unification, possibly leading to a greater understanding and respect for one another. By recognizing and understanding not only the imperfections of this country, but also the contributions of all races, will cause all of us to come together as one. Unification begins with the study of Black history, which improves the overall history curriculum, because without Black history, American history is incomplete, not fully accurate, and in some areas they are actually false. Ursula Wolf Rocca, a veteran high school social studies teacher who serves on the board of Rethinking Schools, discusses what happens when the histories are taught separately. She says that otherwise it reinforces the fundamental flaw, which is that Black history is seen as peripheral. She says that the history of Black and white people have a shared common past. History should never be segregated. It should all be integrated into one in order for it to be 100% accurate, not just for Black students, but for all of us. Journalist and staff writer for Teaching Tolerance, Cassandra Dillard, says that also agrees with this process and believes that the curriculum mistakes of the past can be corrected when we tell the whole story and not just parts of Black history. This may sound simple, but it is an important step in ensuring that all of us receive a complete and comprehensive knowledge of American history, which is false history unless Black history is incorporated. Subsequently, when Black history is separated, incomplete, or even worse, completely omitted from the history curriculum, we are left with an incomplete understanding. Dr. Keenan van die Merope, a professor of philosophy at Ghent University in Belgium, explains the problems that this presents. He says the voice of the oppressed is swept under the rug, while the victorious oppressors recall their own heroic deeds. But many people place great faith in the power of historical education to interrupt this dynamic and serve as an emancipatory tool that can retrieve victim stories from obscurity. There is an African proverb that states, "Until the lion has a historian, the hunter will always be the hero." History is told by the victor, meaning they get to shape the narrative of those who they have conquered or oppressed. Unfortunately, this has been the case with the traditional history curricula. Due to the circumstances of the origins of Africans coming to this country, the history and the accomplishments of their descendants have often been left out or shaped and molded by victors who were the original colonists of this country. Now, yes, this paints a very strong, inspiring, and pretty picture of the history of this country, but that picture is false, which is why American history cannot be history without Black history, and vice versa. To study one without the other is not only incomplete and insufficient, but it robs us all of a thorough understanding of the history of this nation. Now, some may ask if Black history was embedded into the mainstream history curriculum, would Black History Month celebrations still be needed? The answer is yes. Celebrations of Black History Month are the first steps that move education in that direction. Similarly, others ask if the observation of Black history is an unnecessary interruption of traditional instruction and a forced or artificial nod to Black history. And is Black History Month needed when moments of Black history are already taught in the traditional history classes? The celebration of Black History Month is relevant and needed as an important beginning of what we already have. Ohio Congresswoman Marsha Fudge states that Dr. Woodson recognized that generations of African Americans have strengthened our country by urging reforms and breaking down barriers. We see greatness in America in those who have risen above injustice and enriched our society. Each of us is strengthened in the knowledge that is gained during the month, helping us to recognize the importance of every citizen, making us one nation under God. In summary, Black History Month is a historical commemoration of value to society because Black Americans are worthy of being celebrated. Black History Month inspires and motivates us in this generation, and it helps us to learn and be more intentional about Black history in the academic curriculum, and which is why we should all embrace Black History Month. The recognition and the commemoration of the accomplishments of Black Americans throughout this country is pivotal to further understanding and respecting one another in order to bring unification to this country. And what if Black History Month isn't recognized or celebrated? Then we will miss out on the opportunity to learn about groundbreaking individuals like Shirley Chisholm, who was the first African-American female elected to Congress, and in 1972 was the first African-American to ever run for the President of the United States. Percy Sutton, a prominent activist, civil rights lawyer, and freedom writer, said that Chisholm was a new sounding trumpet, summoning all of us to march toward change, to bring out the best in ourselves, to overcome our racial fears and differences, to discard our labels, and to forget our old myths and our old slogans. Hidden figures like Chisholm are not only important to Black history, but important to American history, and therefore the study and teaching of Black history should be intentional. Black History Month and the continuous study of Black history will foster unity because it enables us to acknowledge and recognize the role people of various races have played in the establishment of these United States of America. Moving more toward a respect factor between the races will move all of us closer to fulfilling the dreams of those who have come before us. Black History Month will continue to have a positive impact on all of us, just like those who are celebrated, once it becomes something that is embraced and celebrated by all. We must be intentional about how Black history is presented in our classrooms, in the history curriculum of our classrooms, particularly to the younger generations. I'm blessed to say that right here at Trinity, we are moving in the right direction. Thanks to Dr. Bridges, who highlighted the accomplishments of Black Americans during Black History Month. I challenge all of you under the sound of my voice to get involved and inspired, and to educate not just yourself, but the community around you, because together we can and we will fulfill the final line of Johnson's poem, Marching Toward the Utmost Victory: unification, love, respect, and equality. I'd like to thank Ms. Franklin, my advisor, Ms. Alexander, to my parents, and to Ms. Pope for the countless hours that we spent preparing, and to all my family and friends watching on the live. Thank you.